Hey, dish rag!
Petty Officer Braxton Steele's voice boomed across the mess hall at Coronado Naval Base, his perfectly pressed Navy working uniform catching the morning California sun streaming through steel-framed windows. "What's your rank? Cleaning lady first class?" His muscular 6'2" frame towered over the small woman in the faded gray t-shirt who was quietly wiping down tables, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical high bun with loose curls framing her face. The mess hall erupted in laughter from the dozen Navy SEALs scattered across metal tables, their breakfast trays forgotten as phones emerged to capture what promised to be morning entertainment. Saren kept her blue eyes focused on her work, methodically cleaning each surface with practiced efficiency, while Braxton's crew gathered closer. "Come on, princess," Knox Ryder sneered, his weapons specialist insignia glinting as he leaned against a nearby table. "We're talking to you. Don't tell me you're too good to answer a simple question." What none of them noticed was the subtle way Serene's shoulders remained perfectly aligned, how her breathing stayed controlled despite the mounting harassment, or how her eyes had already cataloged every exit, every potential improvised weapon, every face in the growing crowd. They didn't see the small red light blinking in the corner security camera that had just rotated 3 degrees to capture a better angle. In exactly 14 minutes, that gray t-shirt would tear during a training accident, revealing what lay beneath. In exactly 14 minutes, every person in that mess hall would understand they had just witnessed the beginning of Braxton Steele's career-ending mistake. But for now, the morning sun cast long shadows across the polished floor, and somewhere in the base's security center, a figure in the darkness watched every movement with cold, calculating eyes. Braxton stepped closer, his combat boots clicking against the linoleum with military precision. "You know what really gets me? Civilians thinking they can just waltz onto our base without earning the right to be here." His voice carried across the mess hall, drawing attention from personnel at nearby tables who sensed entertainment brewing. The morning crowd was thick with SEALs finishing breakfast before their training rotations. Steam rose from coffee cups while the smell of bacon mixed with salt air from the nearby Pacific. This was their domain, their sacred space, and Braxton was positioning himself as its defender against unwanted intrusion. "Tell you what, sweetheart," Braxton continued, circling her table like a predator, "why don't you enlighten us about your qualifications? What makes you think you belong here among warriors?" Serene's cloth moved in steady circles across the metal surface. Her posture remained perfectly straight, shoulders back in a stance that any drill instructor would recognize as textbook military bearing. But none of the watching SEALs noticed the subtle discipline in her movement, too focused on what they perceived as weakness to recognize signs of training. Knox pushed off from his leaning position, weapons specialist qualification badges catching the fluorescent lighting. "Seriously though, how did you even get base access? Don't tell me they're running charity cases through security now." The question revealed Knox's background in weapons procurement and his familiarity with security protocols. His tone suggested genuine curiosity mixed with condescension, as if the very idea of civilian presence required explanation. "Maybe Daddy pulled some strings," suggested Petty Officer Jake Morrison from the gathered crowd. "Got his little princess a make-work job where she can play house while real warriors handle serious business." The suggestion hit multiple nerves simultaneously. Military culture placed enormous emphasis on earned advancement through merit, and implying someone had received unearned position through family connections was a serious accusation that could destroy reputations. Serene's cleaning motion paused for exactly 2 seconds. The pause was so brief most observers missed it entirely, but those trained in threat assessment might have recognized it as the kind of controlled reaction that preceded either complete submission or explosive violence. When her hand resumed its circular motion, the rhythm remained perfectly steady. If you're already feeling that burn of injustice watching Serene endure this public humiliation, smash that like button right now and hit subscribe, because this story is about to take turns that will shatter everything you think you know about strength and identity. And don't forget to hit that thanks button to support these incredible stories of hidden warriors. I'm curious, where are you watching this from today? Are you tuning in from the States, maybe overseas, or somewhere else entirely? Drop your location in the comments because I love seeing where these tales of undercover heroes reach across the globe. Decker Hayes had been observing from a corner table, his massive 6'4" frame making him impossible to miss, even among the physically impressive SEALs. His specialty in close quarters combat had developed his ability to read body language and assess potential threats, and something about the woman's posture was triggering warning signals he couldn't quite identify. "You know what bothers me most?" Decker said, his voice carrying the authority that came from years of combat experience. "It's disrespectful. We've got people bleeding and dying overseas while civilians get cushy base jobs they haven't earned." His words carried weight that went beyond simple harassment. Decker's reputation for aggressive training methods was well known throughout Coronado, and his decision to join the confrontation elevated the potential for physical intimidation. Seren continued her methodical cleaning, but now she was working near the mess hall's fruit preparation station. Without breaking rhythm, she picked up a paring knife to cut an apple that had been left on the counter. The blade moved in her hands with unconscious precision, peeling the skin in one continuous spiral that fell to the counter in perfect coils. Knox noticed the knife work first. The movements were too smooth, too controlled for someone whose background was simple cleaning. Her grip showed none of the hesitation civilian handlers typically displayed when working with sharp implements, and her cutting technique demonstrated muscle memory that suggested extensive practice. "Where'd you learn to handle a blade like that?" Knox asked, his tone shifting from mockery to genuine curiosity. Seren set down the knife and returned to her cleaning cloth without acknowledging the question. The apple lay perfectly peeled on the counter, its skin forming artistic spirals that spoke of hands trained in precision work under pressure. Braxton seized on Knox's observation. "Oh, look at that! Our cleaning lady has some knife skills. Maybe she worked in a kitchen before landing this sweet gig." But Knox wasn't satisfied with the dismissive explanation. His weapons specialist training had exposed him to various forms of blade work, and what he had just witnessed looked more like tactical training than culinary preparation. The woman's grip, stance, and cutting rhythm all suggested familiarity with knives as tools rather than kitchen implements. "That wasn't kitchen work," Knox said slowly. "That was precision blade handling. Where'd you get training like that?" For the first time since the confrontation began, Seren looked up from her cleaning. Her blue eyes met Knox's gaze directly, and for a moment he felt the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated rather than conducting his own assessment. "I've had various jobs," she said simply. The response was perfectly reasonable, but delivered with the kind of control that suggested careful consideration of every word. Knox's weapons background made him notice that her answer provided information without revealing anything specific about her background or training. Dr. Vera Blackstone chose that moment to enter the mess hall, her civilian clothes and professional bearing immediately identifying her as someone with authority despite her non-military status. Her background in psychological evaluation for classified military operations had given her extensive experience in reading group dynamics and identifying potential problems before they escalated. Her appearance wasn't coincidental. The base's routine monitoring systems had flagged the developing confrontation as worth observation, and Dr. Blackstone had been assigned to conduct real-time assessment of the social dynamics. She approached the coffee station with casual professionalism, positioning herself where she could observe the interaction while appearing to be focused on her own business. Her psychological training allowed her to assess the situation without drawing attention to her evaluation activities. Braxton, unaware of Dr. Blackstone's presence or purpose, continued his harassment campaign. "Various jobs," she says. "Real specific answer there, princess. What's the matter? Can't you keep track of your own work history?" Knox remained focused on the knife demonstration he had witnessed. "Show me that again," he said, pointing toward the fruit station. "Cut another apple." The request surprised everyone, including Braxton, who had been building toward another round of verbal attacks. Knox's sudden interest in testing the woman's knife skills seemed to come from professional curiosity rather than simple harassment. Seren looked at the fruit station, then back at Knox. "Why?" Again, the single-word response carried more authority than seemed appropriate for someone in her apparent position. She wasn't refusing the request, but she was requiring Knox to justify it before complying. "Because what I just saw looked like tactical blade training, not food preparation, and I want to understand what kind of background produces that level of skill." Knox's honesty about his suspicions created a moment of tension in the group. His weapons specialist credentials gave weight to his assessment, but articulating his concerns also suggested that the woman's background might be more complex than her apparent role indicated. Dr. Blackstone made subtle notes on her phone, documenting the shift from general harassment to specific questioning about skills and background. The psychological dynamics were evolving in ways that suggested the confrontation might reveal information that none of the participants expected. Master Chief Wade Vance appeared in the mess hall doorway, his presence immediately commanding attention from every military person in the room. His weathered features and bearing spoke of someone who had seen combat in multiple theaters and earned respect through proven performance rather than bureaucratic advancement. His entrance created a moment of perfect silence as conversations throughout the mess hall stopped entirely. Master Chief Vance's rank and reputation represented decades of operational experience and unquestioned authority that even confident SEALs respected. But instead of addressing the obvious confrontation, Master Chief Vance headed directly toward the coffee station, where Dr. Blackstone was observing. His movement suggested he was aware of her presence and purpose, indicating coordination between multiple levels of authority in monitoring the situation. "Morning, Doctor," he said quietly, acknowledging her evaluation role without drawing attention to it from the gathered SEALs. "Master Chief," she replied with professional courtesy, "interesting social dynamics developing this morning." Their brief exchange confirmed that the confrontation was under official observation, though the nature and purpose of that observation remained unclear to the participants. Knox took advantage of Master Chief Vance's distraction to press his investigation of Seren's knife skills. "Look, I'm not trying to hassle you, but I've seen a lot of blade work in my job, and what you just demonstrated looked like military training. I'm curious about your background." His approach was more respectful than the earlier harassment, but it also represented a more serious investigation of potential security issues. Knox's weapons specialist position gave him legitimate reason to be concerned about unfamiliar personnel displaying unexpected skills. Seren picked up the paring knife again, this time with deliberate precision that made her earlier demonstration look casual. The blade moved in her hands like an extension of her nervous system, cutting another apple with surgical precision that left the fruit divided into perfect uniform sections. Knox watched the demonstration with professional attention, noting details that confirmed his suspicions about her training. The grip, wrist position, and cutting rhythm all suggested extensive practice with edged weapons under pressure conditions. "That's not food prep," he said with certainty. "That's tactical blade work. Where'd you get training like that?" Before Seren could respond, Knox accidentally knocked over his coffee cup, sending liquid cascading across the table she had just finished cleaning. The spill was obviously deliberate, creating a test of her reaction to sabotage and provocation. Serene's response was to calmly retrieve additional cleaning supplies and begin addressing the mess without comment or complaint. Her movements remained controlled and efficient, showing no signs of frustration or anger at having her work deliberately undone. Dr. Blackstone noted the sabotage and Seren's reaction, documenting both Knox's escalation of the confrontation and the woman's remarkable composure under deliberate provocation. The psychological profile emerging from her observations was increasingly inconsistent with typical civilian contractor backgrounds. The advanced communication systems used in modern military operations require sophisticated encryption technologies that protect classified information from interception. Military-grade secure communication devices utilize multi-layered encryption protocols originally developed for special operations forces, providing the same level of protection used by elite units worldwide. These professional communication solutions offer enterprise-level security features that ensure sensitive conversations remain completely protected, whether for business executives, government officials, or security professionals who require the highest standards of confidential communication technology. The mess hall's radio system crackled with static, indicating a technical problem that was disrupting communications throughout the facility. The malfunction created an opportunity to test another aspect of Seren's background, as personnel struggled to restore contact with other base operations. Knox seized on the technical difficulty as another chance to assess the woman's capabilities. "Hey, cleaning lady, you said you do maintenance work. Think you can fix our radio system?" The challenge was designed to expose limitations in her technical knowledge, but Seren approached the malfunctioning radio with the same calm professionalism she had shown throughout the confrontation. She examined the unit for 30 seconds, identifying the source of the interference with systematic precision that suggested extensive familiarity with military communication equipment. Her hands moved across the controls with unconscious expertise, adjusting frequencies and connections that restored clear communication within minutes. Knox watched the radio repair with growing unease. The woman's technical knowledge extended far beyond what would be expected from general maintenance work, and her familiarity with military communication systems suggested a background that required security clearance. "Where'd you learn to work on military radios?" he asked. "Various technical assignments," Seren replied, her standard response providing no specific information while acknowledging the skill demonstration. Braxton had been watching the radio repair with obvious frustration as his harassment campaign was interrupted by evidence that their target possessed legitimate technical capabilities. His strategy of establishing dominance through mockery was being undermined by demonstrations of competence. "I don't care what kind of technical training she's had," he announced loudly. "She's still a civilian contractor who doesn't belong in our spaces, and I'm going to test whether she understands basic military protocols." Braxton's escalation represented a shift from questioning her background to directly challenging her knowledge of military procedures. His tone suggested he was preparing to demonstrate her ignorance of subjects that any real military person would understand. "Let's start with weapons terminology," he said with obvious confidence. "Tell me the difference between direct impingement and gas piston operation in assault rifles." The question was designed to expose civilian ignorance of technical military subjects, but Seren's response demonstrated knowledge that surprised everyone present. Direct impingement systems route propellant gases directly into the bolt carrier group, while gas piston systems use a separate piston mechanism to cycle the action. Direct impingement systems like the M4 platform are lighter and more accurate, but require more frequent cleaning due to carbon fouling in the receiver. Gas piston systems like the HK Force 16 run cleaner, but add weight and complexity that can affect accuracy at extended ranges. The detailed technical response revealed knowledge that went far beyond what civilian contractors would typically possess. Knox recognized that her explanation demonstrated not just academic understanding, but practical experience with multiple weapon systems. Braxton's confidence evaporated as he realized his test had backfired completely. Instead of exposing ignorance, he had prompted a demonstration of expertise that exceeded what many military personnel could provide. Knox followed up with a more advanced question. "What's the cyclic rate of fire for the M240 Bravo machine gun?" 750 rounds per minute, Seren replied without hesitation. But practical sustained fire rate is closer to 100 rounds per minute to prevent barrel overheating and conserve ammunition during extended engagements. Again, her response demonstrated both technical knowledge and practical understanding of operational limitations that suggested actual field experience rather than theoretical training. Dr. Blackstone documented the weapons knowledge demonstration, noting that the woman's expertise extended beyond what would be expected from civilian maintenance personnel. Her psychological assessment was beginning to suggest background that might require different evaluation protocols. The tension is building, and you can feel something massive coming, can't you? If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure you've hit that subscribe button and turned on notifications because the revelation ahead will blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's about to happen next. Decker Hayes decided to test physical capabilities as the verbal challenges were failing to establish the dominance that had been expected. His specialty in close quarters combat had given him confidence in his ability to assess physical threats. And he was curious about whether the woman's composure would hold under physical pressure. "Let's see how she handles equipment under load," Decker announced, approaching with a heavy ammunition crate that typically required 2 people to move safely. "Think you can help me relocate this cleaning lady?" The challenge was designed to expose physical limitations and create opportunity for intimidation through size disparity. Decker's massive frame made the crate look manageable, but its weight would typically challenge anyone without specific strength training. Seren examined the crate and its weight distribution before lifting it with technique that demonstrated familiarity with heavy equipment handling under tactical conditions. Her lifting form showed none of the strain civilian handlers typically displayed, and she moved the crate with controlled precision that suggested extensive physical conditioning. Decker watched the demonstration with professional interest, recognizing that her lifting technique and core strength indicated training that went beyond typical fitness programs. The way she handled the weight suggested military-grade physical conditioning. "Where'd you get strength training like that?" he asked. Knox rolled up Seren's sleeves to examine her hands more closely, looking for additional evidence of the background he suspected. What he found confirmed his growing suspicions about her actual status and training. Her hands showed calluses and patterns that were unmistakably military. The markings on her palms indicated extensive weapon handling, while her fingertips showed scars consistent with field training accidents. Most telling were the specific callus patterns on her index fingers that marked someone with thousands of hours of trigger time. "These aren't maintenance workers' hands," Knox announced to the gathered crowd. "These are combat hands. Look at the callus patterns, the scarring. This woman has extensive weapons training." Knox's observation drew attention from personnel throughout the mess hall, as word spread that the harassment target might not be what she appeared. The gathering crowd created increased pressure for Seren to explain the discrepancies between her apparent role and her demonstrated capabilities. Dr. Blackstone noted the crowd dynamics and the escalating pressure for disclosure, recognizing that the situation was approaching a point where intervention might be necessary to prevent the confrontation from becoming problematic for all involved. The mess hall doors opened to admit Captain Logan Ashford, whose entrance immediately commanded attention from every person in the room. His bearing and uniform spoke of someone with significant authority and extensive operational experience. Captain Ashford's gaze swept across the gathered crowd before settling on Seren. For a moment that lasted exactly 3 seconds, his expression showed recognition that was immediately suppressed as professional control reasserted itself. The brief moment of recognition was noticed by several observers, including Dr. Blackstone, who documented the interaction as potentially significant to understanding the woman's actual status and background. Captain Ashford approached the confrontation with apparent casualness, but his movement suggested a purpose that went beyond routine mess hall inspection. His presence created immediate tension as personnel recognized that senior officer attention typically indicated serious implications. "What's the situation here?" Captain Ashford asked Master Chief Vance, though his question was clearly directed toward understanding the confrontation rather than receiving routine status reports. Master Chief Vance's response was carefully neutral. "Personnel conducting informal assessment of civilian contractor capabilities, sir." The diplomatic description accurately characterized the confrontation while avoiding language that would suggest harassment or inappropriate behavior. But Captain Ashford's attention remained focused on Seren, rather than the military personnel conducting the assessment. Captain Ashford's continued presence created uncomfortable awareness among the gathered SEALs that their harassment campaign was now under senior officer observation. The potential career implications of their behavior became suddenly apparent as they realized their actions would be evaluated by someone with authority to affect their futures. Knox decided to continue his investigation despite Captain Ashford's presence. "Sir, this civilian contractor has demonstrated capabilities that seem inconsistent with typical maintenance backgrounds: advanced weapons knowledge, tactical blade skills, combat-level physical conditioning." Knox's report was factually accurate, but also represented an attempt to justify the confrontation by suggesting legitimate security concerns. His weapons specialist position gave him credibility in making such assessments, but his methods had clearly crossed professional boundaries. Captain Ashford examined Knox's observations with apparent professional interest, but his evaluation seemed to focus more on the appropriateness of the investigation than on its conclusions. "And what protocols did you follow in conducting this assessment, Petty Officer Ryder?" Captain Ashford asked. The question exposed the fundamental problem with Knox's approach. His observations might have been accurate, but his methods had bypassed proper channels for reporting security concerns and had instead involved harassment of the person in question. Before Knox could respond, Captain Ashford made an abrupt decision that surprised everyone present. "I need to make some calls," he announced, turning toward the exit with obvious urgency. Captain Ashford's sudden departure created speculation throughout the mess hall as personnel tried to understand what had prompted such an abrupt reaction. His behavior suggested that Seren's presence had implications that required immediate attention at levels above routine base operations. Dr. Blackstone followed Captain Ashford's exit with professional interest, recognizing that his response indicated knowledge about the woman's status that wasn't available to the personnel conducting the harassment. Her psychological assessment would need to include evaluation of the command dynamics surrounding the situation. In the base's security center, 3 floors above the mess hall, Commander Ethan Cross sat in darkness, surrounded by multiple monitors displaying feeds from throughout the facility. His weathered features showed the strain of constant vigilance as he tracked activities across dozens of simultaneous operations. The security camera focused on Mess Hall Alpha occupied his primary attention, its high-definition feed providing perfect clarity of the confrontation developing around his half-sister. Commander Cross had been monitoring Seren's assignment from the moment she arrived at Coronado, watching for exactly the kind of situation that was now unfolding. Commander Cross's background in intelligence operations had taught him that the most dangerous threats often emerged from routine interactions that escalated beyond their original scope. Seren's cover identity as maintenance personnel was designed to provide unremarkable access to base facilities, but the harassment was creating visibility that could compromise her actual mission. His fingers moved across the control panel, adjusting camera angles to capture every detail of the confrontation while simultaneously monitoring communication channels for any indication that Captain Ashford's reaction had triggered official protocols. The irony wasn't lost on Commander Cross that he was watching his sister being harassed by personnel who had no understanding of her actual capabilities or mission. Her restraint in the face of provocation demonstrated professional discipline that impressed even someone familiar with her background, but the situation was approaching parameters that might require intervention. Seren's cover could only withstand so much scrutiny before her actual credentials became necessary to protect her from escalating harassment. Commander Cross activated an encrypted communication channel. "Phoenix Control, this is Overwatch. The subject is experiencing cover pressure from routine personnel, requesting guidance on intervention protocols." The response came immediately through his earpiece. "Overwatch, maintain observation. The subject has full authority to adjust cover parameters if the situation requires. Do not intervene unless specifically requested." The guidance confirmed that Seren retained control over her own operational security, but it also placed responsibility on Commander Cross to monitor developments and provide support if the situation exceeded her ability to manage through established cover identity. Back in the mess hall, Knox was conducting what amounted to an impromptu field interrogation as he tried to reconcile the discrepancies he had observed with Seren's supposed background as civilian maintenance personnel. "Look," Knox said, his tone shifting toward genuine curiosity rather than harassment. "I've got years of weapons specialist training, and what I've seen this morning doesn't add up. You've got tactical blade skills, military radio expertise, advanced weapons knowledge, and physical conditioning that suggests serious training. That's not the background of someone doing general maintenance work." Knox's summary was accurate and demonstrated legitimate professional concerns about personnel operating outside their supposed qualifications. His approach had been inappropriate, but his observations had identified genuine discrepancies that warranted explanation. Seren's response maintained the same controlled professionalism she had shown throughout the confrontation. "I've had various assignments that required different skill sets." Again, her answer provided acknowledgement, without specific information, a response pattern that was itself indicative of training and information security protocols. Decker Hayes decided to conduct a more direct test of her physical capabilities. "You know what? Let's settle this question about background once and for all. We're heading to the weapons range for morning qualifications. Why don't you join us and demonstrate these skills everyone's talking about?" The suggestion represented a significant escalation from verbal questioning to practical demonstration under controlled conditions. Weapons range testing would provide definitive evidence about Seren's actual capabilities while placing the evaluation in a professional military context. Dr. Blackstone recognized that the situation was approaching a decision point where Seren would need to either accept the challenge and risk exposure of her actual capabilities, or decline and appear to validate the harassment she had been receiving. Master Chief Vance stepped forward, his decades of experience recognizing that the confrontation had reached a point where senior oversight was necessary to prevent potential problems for all involved. "That's enough," Master Chief Vance announced with authority that immediately commanded attention from every person in the mess hall. "This assessment has gone beyond appropriate parameters for routine interaction with civilian personnel." His intervention represented recognition that the harassment had crossed professional boundaries and required command-level attention to prevent escalation into more serious problems. But Knox wasn't ready to abandon his investigation. "Master Chief, with respect, we've identified legitimate security concerns that warrant evaluation. This person has capabilities that don't match her supposed background, and her clearance level appears to exceed standard civilian contractor parameters." Knox's persistence demonstrated both professional dedication and inability to recognize when his investigation had become inappropriate. His weapons specialist background made him valuable in identifying security discrepancies, but his methods had clearly violated protocols for addressing such concerns. Master Chief Vance's response balanced recognition of Knox's legitimate observations with correction of his inappropriate methods. Petty Officer Ryder, if you have security concerns about base personnel, there are proper channels for reporting such observations. Harassment is not among those channels. The rebuke was delivered with the kind of authority that made clear Knox's behavior would be evaluated by personnel with power to affect his career prospects. Master Chief Vance's intervention also provided protection for Seren while acknowledging that Knox's observations might have merit. Dr. Blackstone approached Master Chief Vance with her documentation of the morning's events. Master Chief, I have behavioral assessment data that may be relevant to command evaluation of this situation. Her offer to provide psychological analysis created an opportunity for official review of the confrontation while ensuring that all perspectives would be considered in determining appropriate follow-up actions. Elite military personnel require specialized financial protection that extends far beyond standard civilian coverage. Advanced liability frameworks designed specifically for high-risk operational environments provide comprehensive financial security during classified missions and training exercises. These premium insurance packages include coverage for equipment replacement, medical treatment, and legal representation essential for personnel operating in sensitive military capacities where standard coverage would be completely inadequate for the unique risks involved in special operations work. The confrontation had attracted attention from personnel throughout the mess hall, creating an audience that included both military personnel and civilian contractors who were trying to understand the implications of what they were witnessing. The visibility of the situation meant that resolution would need to address both the immediate participants and the broader base community. Knox made one final attempt to pursue his investigation. Master Chief, I request permission to conduct formal weapons qualification testing with this civilian contractor to verify the capabilities she's demonstrated this morning. The request represented an attempt to legitimize his earlier harassment by framing it as a professional security assessment. Knox's weapons specialist credentials gave him standing to make such requests, but his methods had already compromised his authority to conduct such evaluations. Seren finally spoke with authority that surprised everyone present. I'll accept your weapons qualification challenge, Petty Officer Ryder, but under formal testing protocols with official observers and documented results. Her acceptance of the challenge, combined with her specification of formal protocols, demonstrated confidence that suggested she expected to perform well under official scrutiny. The shift in her tone also indicated that she was moving beyond passive acceptance of harassment toward active engagement with the situation. Knox felt the weight of realization that his challenge had been accepted by someone who showed no concern about demonstrating her capabilities under official observation. The confidence in her acceptance suggested that formal testing might reveal capabilities that exceeded his own. Dr. Blackstone made detailed notes about Seren's decision to accept formal testing, recognizing that the choice indicated either supreme confidence in her abilities or willingness to sacrifice her cover identity to resolve the harassment. Master Chief Vance recognized that the situation had evolved beyond his authority to resolve through simple intervention. Formal weapons testing, involving civilian personnel, required coordination with multiple levels of command and could have implications that extended far beyond the immediate participants. Hold up. If you're thinking this can't get any more intense, you're about to be proven wrong. The next few minutes will change everything. Make sure you're subscribed, because this is the kind of story that proves reality is stranger than fiction. In the security center above, Commander Cross watched his sister accept the weapons qualification challenge with a mixture of professional admiration and personal concern. Her decision to engage with formal testing represented a calculated risk that could either resolve the harassment or completely compromise her cover identity. Commander Cross understood that Seren's acceptance of the challenge indicated confidence in her ability to control the revelation of her capabilities while maintaining operational security, but formal testing would create official documentation that could have lasting implications for her mission and her safety. The encrypted communication channel crackled to life. Overwatch. Subject has elected to engage with formal testing protocols. Maintain observation and prepare for potential operational adjustment if cover parameters become unsustainable. The guidance confirmed that Seren's decision had been anticipated as a possible development, but it also indicated that her superiors were prepared to modify or terminate her mission if the testing revealed too much about her actual status and capabilities. The mess hall began to empty as word spread that formal weapons testing would take place at the range facility. The transition from harassment to official evaluation represented a significant escalation that would create permanent documentation of the morning's events. Knox felt the pressure of realization that his challenge had been accepted by someone who showed no concern about official scrutiny of her performance. The weapons specialist training that had enabled him to identify her capabilities now made him aware that he might have seriously underestimated the scope of her actual background. Decker Hayes watched the transition to formal testing with professional interest, recognizing that weapons range evaluation would provide definitive answers about capabilities that had been demonstrated only partially during the mess hall confrontation. Dr. Blackstone prepared to relocate her observation activities to the weapons range, where formal testing would provide additional data about the psychological profiles of all participants. Her assessment would need to address both the appropriateness of the original harassment and the implications of whatever capabilities might be revealed through official testing. Master Chief Vance coordinated the transition to formal testing protocols, ensuring that proper safety procedures and official observation would be maintained throughout the weapons qualification process. His experience told him that formal testing involving civilian personnel could have implications that extended far beyond simple marksmanship evaluation. The morning's harassment had evolved into official evaluation that would provide definitive answers about Seren's actual capabilities and background. But those answers would come at the cost of visibility that could compromise whatever mission had brought her to Coronado Naval Base under civilian cover. As personnel moved toward the weapons range, the stage was set for revelations that would transform the understanding of everyone involved in the morning's confrontation. The transition from harassment to formal testing represented a point of no return that would determine the future for all participants. The weapons range facility represented neutral ground where capabilities could be demonstrated under controlled conditions with official observation. But for Seren, the transition to formal testing meant that her carefully maintained cover identity was about to undergo scrutiny that could reveal far more than anyone expected. The morning sun climbed higher over Coronado Naval Base as the confrontation moved toward its inevitable conclusion at the weapons range, where truth would finally emerge from the careful deceptions that had protected operational security until harassment forced revelation that could change everything for everyone involved. The weapons range at Coronado Naval Base stretched across 200 yards of carefully maintained firing lanes, with concrete barriers separating individual shooting positions and electronic target systems providing real-time scoring data. The facility represented one of the most advanced marksmanship training environments in the naval system, equipped with technology that could measure accuracy to fractions of inches at extended ranges. Knox led the procession from the mess hall, his weapons specialist credentials providing authority to conduct formal qualification testing with civilian personnel. But his earlier harassment had created scrutiny that would ensure every aspect of the evaluation would be documented and reviewed by personnel with authority to affect his career prospects. Seren walked beside Master Chief Vance, her calm professionalism unchanged by the transition to formal testing. Her willingness to accept weapons qualification challenges demonstrated confidence that suggested she expected to perform well under official observation, but the implications of such confidence were beginning to concern even supportive observers. Dr. Blackstone coordinated with range safety personnel to ensure proper documentation of the testing process, recognizing that formal weapons evaluation involving civilian contractors could have policy implications extending far beyond the immediate participants. Her psychological assessment would need to address both the appropriateness of the challenge and the significance of whatever capabilities might be revealed. Decker Hayes carried the testing equipment, his massive frame making the heavy ammunition containers look manageable, while his expression suggested professional curiosity about capabilities that had been demonstrated only partially during the mess hall confrontation. His background in close-quarters combat had given him appreciation for precision marksmanship, and he was eager to see whether Seren's other skills extended to weapons accuracy. Braxton trailed behind the group, his earlier confidence completely undermined by evidence that his harassment target possessed legitimate military capabilities. His strategy of establishing dominance through mockery had backfired spectacularly, and he was beginning to understand that formal testing might reveal the full scope of his mistake. The range facility buzzed with activity as word spread throughout the base that civilian contractor weapons testing was about to take place. Such evaluations were unusual enough to attract attention from personnel who wanted to witness whatever capabilities had prompted formal challenge from weapons specialists. Rangemaster Sergeant Torres greeted the group with professional courtesy that included careful attention to safety protocols and proper documentation procedures. His 20-year career in marksmanship instruction had exposed him to evaluation of personnel from every background, and he understood that formal testing created permanent records that could have lasting implications. "Master Chief Vance," Sergeant Torres said, "I understand we're conducting weapons qualification evaluation with civilian personnel. What specific protocols are we following for documentation and safety oversight?" Master Chief Vance's response balanced recognition of the unusual situation with emphasis on proper procedures. "Standard qualification protocols with full documentation. We're assessing capabilities that have been demonstrated informally and require official verification." Knox stepped forward to specify the testing parameters. "Sergeant Torres, I'm requesting standard marksmanship evaluation using M4 carbine platform with iron sights at distances from 25 to 300 yards. Standard ammunition load with timed firing sequences." The testing protocol represented comprehensive evaluation that would assess basic marksmanship skills, weapon handling under pressure, and accuracy at ranges that challenged even experienced military personnel. Knox's choice of iron sights rather than optical enhancement suggested confidence that Seren's claimed capabilities would not withstand rigorous testing. Sergeant Torres examined Seren's base access credentials and found documentation that authorized weapons training participation, though the clearance level indicated on her identification seemed unusually high for civilian maintenance personnel. The discrepancy was noted in his official log, but did not prevent her participation in the requested evaluation. "Ma'am," Sergeant Torres said to Seren, "have you completed weapons safety certification for this facility?" Seren produced additional credentials that demonstrated current qualification in range safety procedures, though again the documentation suggested background that exceeded typical civilian contractor requirements. Sergeant Torres noted the discrepancies, but found no grounds to prevent her participation in the formal testing. Knox felt the first stirrings of unease as he realized that Seren's credentials included authorizations that he hadn't expected. Her possession of current weapons safety certification suggested recent military training that contradicted her supposed background in civilian maintenance work. Blackstone positioned herself where she could observe both the testing process and the reactions of all participants. Her psychological training focused on identifying behavioral patterns that might reveal information about backgrounds and motivations that weren't immediately apparent. The weapons testing began with basic safety procedures and equipment familiarization, standard protocols designed to ensure safe operation, regardless of the participant's experience level. But Seren's handling of the M4 carbine immediately revealed familiarity that went far beyond casual training. Her weapon inspection was conducted with systematic precision that demonstrated thousands of hours of repetitive training. The way she checked chamber status, examined bolt function, and verified safety mechanisms all suggested muscle memory developed through extensive military experience rather than civilian instruction. Knox watched the inspection process with growing concern as he recognized the professional efficiency of Seren's weapon handling. Her movements showed none of the hesitation or uncertainty that characterized civilian personnel, even those with recreational shooting experience. "Where'd you get M4 training?" Knox asked, though his tone had shifted from challenge to genuine professional curiosity. "Various assignments required familiarity with standard military equipment," Seren replied, her standard response providing acknowledgement without specific information about her background or training sources. Sergeant Torres noted the professional quality of Seren's weapon handling in his official log, recognizing that her familiarity with the M4 platform suggested background that warranted documentation for future reference. The first phase of testing involved 25-yard accuracy assessment using standard target configurations and time limitations that challenged even experienced shooters. Knox expected that formal testing under pressure would reveal limitations in Seren's capabilities that hadn't been apparent during casual demonstration. Seren approached the firing line with controlled breathing and stance that immediately identified her as someone with extensive marksmanship training. Her position was textbook perfect, with a natural point of aim and sight alignment that demonstrated proper instruction reinforced through extensive practice. When Sergeant Torres called the commence fire command, Seren's first shot struck the target's center ring with precision that surprised even Knox, whose weapons specialist background had exposed him to exceptional marksmanship performances throughout his career. Her firing rhythm was controlled and deliberate, with each shot carefully aimed and executed with precision that suggested competitive-level training. The electronic scoring system registered consecutive center hits that placed her performance in the expert range, typically achieved only by personnel with specialized marksmanship assignments. Knox felt the weight of realization that formal testing was revealing capabilities that exceeded his own performance levels. His weapons specialist credentials had made him confident in his ability to expose limitations in civilian training, but Seren's accuracy was demonstrating expertise that suggested professional military background. Decker Hayes watched the marksmanship demonstration with professional appreciation for skills that matched or exceeded those of personnel in his close-quarters combat specialty. The precision and consistency of Seren's shooting suggested training that went beyond standard military qualification requirements. Dr. Blackstone documented the reactions of all observers to Seren's performance, noting that her exceptional marksmanship was creating surprise and concern among personnel who had expected formal testing to expose limitations rather than confirm expertise. Braxton stood silent as he watched his harassment target demonstrate capabilities that completely undermined his earlier assumptions about her background and qualifications. The formal testing was revealing that his mockery had been directed towards someone whose actual skills exceeded those of most military personnel. The 25-yard phase concluded with Seren achieving perfect scores that placed her performance in the top percentile of all personnel who had been tested at the facility. Sergeant Torres noted the exceptional results in his official documentation while preparing for the more challenging intermediate range evaluation. Knox realized that continuing the testing would likely reveal additional capabilities that would further contradict Seren's supposed civilian background, but his challenge had been accepted and recorded officially, preventing him from withdrawing the evaluation without appearing to acknowledge error in his initial assessment. The 50-yard testing phase increased the difficulty by reducing target size while maintaining time pressure that challenged accuracy under stress. The evaluation was designed to differentiate between basic marksmanship competency and advanced precision shooting that characterized specialized military training. Seren's performance at 50 yards continued to demonstrate exceptional accuracy with shot groups that indicated training in precision marksmanship rather than basic military qualification. Her ability to maintain accuracy under time pressure suggested experience in competitive shooting or specialized military applications. Master Chief Vance observed the testing with decades of experience that allowed him to recognize exceptional performance when he witnessed it. Seren's marksmanship capabilities were clearly at the level of specialized military personnel rather than civilian contractors, regardless of her official status. The gathering crowd of observers included personnel from throughout the base who had heard about the unusual civilian contractor testing. The audience created additional pressure for all participants while ensuring that the results would be widely known throughout the facility. Knox continued the evaluation despite growing evidence that his challenge was revealing capabilities that contradicted all his assumptions about Seren's background. His weapons specialist pride prevented him from acknowledging that he might have seriously underestimated someone he had initially dismissed as unqualified. The 100-yard testing phase represented the standard for advanced military marksmanship, with target configurations and time limitations that challenged even experienced combat veterans. Knox expected that increased distance would finally reveal limitations in Seren's training and equipment familiarity, but Seren's performance at extended range continued to demonstrate exceptional accuracy with consistency that suggested training in designated marksman roles or specialized sniper instruction. Her ability to compensate for wind conditions and maintain precision at distance indicated experience that went far beyond standard military training. Sergeant Torres documented the continued exceptional performance, while noting that Seren's capabilities were approaching levels typically associated with specialized reconnaissance or special operations personnel, rather than general military training. Dr. Blackstone observed that the testing was creating visible stress among the challenging personnel, as they realized that formal evaluation was confirming rather than contradicting the capabilities they had questioned. The The psychological dynamics were shifting as evidence mounted that their harassment had been directed towards someone with legitimate expertise. Knox felt compelled to continue the testing despite mounting evidence that he had made serious errors in judgment about Seren's background and qualifications. His weapons specialist credentials had created confidence that formal testing would vindicate his concerns, but the results were achieving exactly the opposite effect. Decker-Hayes suggested advancing to the most challenging phase of evaluation. Let's try 300 yards with limited ammunition. See if precision holds up under resource constraints. The suggestion represented the most difficult standard marksmanship test available at the facility, with target sizes and distance that challenged even specialized precision shooters. Knox agreed to the advanced testing despite growing awareness that continued evaluation would likely reveal additional evidence of Seren's expertise. The 300-yard phase required adjustment for environmental conditions, including wind speed, temperature, and humidity that affected projectile flight characteristics. The evaluation demanded both technical knowledge and practical experience that characterized advanced military marksmanship training. Seren's performance at maximum range demonstrated precision that amazed even Sergeant Torres, whose 20 years of range instruction had exposed him to exceptional shooters from every military specialty. Her ability to maintain accuracy at extended distance with iron sights suggested training that exceeded standard military requirements. Knox realized that his formal challenge had revealed capabilities that completely contradicted every assumption he had made about Seren's background. Instead of exposing limitations in civilian training, the testing had demonstrated expertise that suggested professional military specialization in precision marksmanship. The crowd of observers watched in silence as electronic scoring confirmed perfect accuracy at maximum range, a performance that placed Seren's capabilities in the top fraction of 1% of all military personnel who had been tested at the facility. Dr. Blackstone documented the complete reversal of expectations as formal testing revealed that harassment had been directed towards someone whose capabilities exceeded those of the challenging personnel. The psychological implications extended beyond individual consequences to questions about institutional culture and assessment procedures. Knox faced the reality that his weapons specialist credentials had led him to challenge someone whose marksmanship capabilities exceeded his own by significant margins. The formal testing he had requested to expose civilian limitations had instead revealed expertise that suggested elite military background. Professional military education programs designed for advanced tactical training require specialized legal frameworks that address the unique challenges of classified operations. Executive education courses in strategic leadership, crisis management, and operational security provide the same advanced training used by Special Forces commanders worldwide. These professional development programs offer certification in risk assessment, personnel management, and operational planning that prepares participants for leadership roles in high-stakes environments requiring both tactical expertise and strategic thinking capabilities. The weapons testing concluded with results that transformed understanding of Seren's actual capabilities and background. Her performance had demonstrated expertise consistent with specialized military training rather than civilian contractor qualifications, creating questions about her actual status that extended far beyond the original harassment incident. Knox approached Seren with obvious reluctance, his earlier confidence completely undermined by evidence that his challenge had revealed exceptional capabilities rather than civilian limitations. "Ma'am, I need to apologize for my earlier assumptions. Your performance indicates a background that I clearly misjudged." Knox's acknowledgement represented recognition that his harassment had been based on incorrect assumptions about capabilities and qualifications. But his apology also highlighted the inappropriateness of his original approach to investigating his concerns. Sergeant Torres completed his official documentation of the testing results, noting that Seren's performance exceeded standard qualification requirements and approached levels typically associated with specialized reconnaissance or special operations personnel. Master Chief Vance recognized that the weapons testing had raised questions about Seren's actual background that would require official attention at levels above routine base operations. The capabilities revealed through formal evaluation suggested credentials that contradicted her apparent civilian contractor status. "Doctor, Blackstone prepared her psychological assessment of the situation, recognizing that the testing had revealed institutional problems with personnel assessment and interaction protocols that extended beyond individual behavior to systemic cultural issues. The crowd of observers began to disperse with awareness that they had witnessed exceptional marksmanship performance that suggested the civilian contractor possessed military training that exceeded typical qualification standards. Word of the results would spread throughout the base within hours, but Knox wasn't satisfied with simply acknowledging Seren's marksmanship capabilities. His weapons specialist background included familiarity with advanced tactical procedures, and he wanted to test whether her expertise extended beyond precision shooting to comprehensive military knowledge. "Let's try advanced weapons manipulation," Knox suggested. "Field stripping under time pressure with blindfold conditions, standard special operations qualification protocol." The challenge represented evaluation of technical knowledge and manual dexterity under stress conditions that characterized elite military training rather than basic marksmanship instruction. Knox's selection of special operations standards suggested growing awareness that Seren's background might involve specialized military experience. Seren accepted the advanced challenge with the same calm professionalism she had shown throughout the earlier testing, her confidence suggesting that weapon manipulation skills matched her demonstrated marksmanship capabilities. Sergeant Torres provided standard M4 carbine and timing equipment for the advanced evaluation, noting that special operations qualification protocols were rarely used for civilian contractor assessment and required special documentation procedures. Knox blindfolded Seren and started the timing sequence, expecting that technical manipulation without visual reference would finally reveal limitations in her training and experience. The test required precise knowledge of its weapon components and systematic disassembly procedures that characterize specialized military instruction. Seren's hands moved across the weapon with systematic precision that demonstrated extensive practice with blindfolded manipulation. Her finger placement and component removal sequence were flawless, indicating training that went far beyond standard military qualification requirements. The complete field stripping was accomplished in 18 seconds, a time that exceeded special operations standards and placed her performance in the top tier of elite military personnel. Knox watched the demonstration with growing awareness that every test was revealing capabilities that suggested background he had seriously underestimated. Dr. Blackstone documented the advanced technical demonstration, recognizing that Seren's capabilities extended across multiple specialties that characterized comprehensive military training rather than civilian contractor qualifications. Knox felt compelled to acknowledge that his testing had revealed exceptional capabilities across all evaluated areas. "Ma'am, your performance indicates training that exceeds standard military requirements. I need to know about your actual background." His request for disclosure represented recognition that formal testing had revealed capabilities that warranted official investigation rather than harassment, but his methods had already compromised his authority to conduct such inquiries. Seren's response maintained the controlled professionalism she had shown throughout the confrontation. "My qualifications are sufficient for my assigned duties." Again, her answer provided acknowledgement without specific information, a response pattern that itself suggested training in information security protocols that characterized classified military operations. Knox realized that his investigation had reached the limits of what could be determined through informal testing. Seren's capabilities clearly exceeded civilian contractor standards, but obtaining specific information about her background would require official inquiry through proper channels. Master Chief Vance approached Knox with the authority that came from 3 decades of military experience. "Petty Officer Ryder, you've conducted comprehensive testing that has documented exceptional performance across multiple military specialties. What specific concerns do you still have about this personnel?" The question forced Knox to articulate whether his continuing investigation was motivated by legitimate security concerns or personal inability to accept that his harassment had been inappropriate and his assumptions incorrect. Knox struggled to formulate a response that would justify continued investigation in light of evidence that Seren possessed legitimate military capabilities that exceeded his own in several areas. His weapons specialist credentials had created confidence in his assessment abilities, but formal testing had proven his initial judgments completely wrong. Blackstone recognized that the situation had reached a decision point where Knox needed to either acknowledge that his concerns had been addressed through formal testing or admit that his investigation was motivated by factors other than legitimate security assessment. Before Knox could respond to Master Chief Vance's question, the situation changed dramatically with the approach of Captain Ashford, whose return to the weapons range indicated official attention to the testing results and their implications for base operations. Captain Ashford's expression suggested professional concern as he examined the documented results of Seren's performance. The weapons testing had revealed capabilities that required command-level evaluation to determine appropriate follow-up actions. "Master Chief," Captain Ashford said, "I need to review these test results immediately. The performance levels documented here have implications that extend beyond routine weapons qualification." Captain Ashford's attention to the testing results confirmed that Seren's exceptional performance had triggered official protocols for evaluation of personnel whose capabilities exceeded standard expectations. The command attention also validated Knox's original observations while highlighting the inappropriateness of his investigative methods. But Knox had one final challenge that he wanted to present before official intervention terminated his investigation. His weapons specialist background included familiarity with explosive ordnance disposal procedures, and he was curious whether Seren's technical knowledge extended to complex military systems. "Sir," Knox said to Captain Ashford, "I'd like to conduct one more evaluation. Technical knowledge of explosive systems and disposal procedures. It would provide a comprehensive assessment of military background." Knox's request for additional testing represented a final attempt to determine the full scope of Seren's capabilities before official protocols restricted further informal investigation. His suggestion of explosive ordnance evaluation also indicated growing awareness that her background might involve specialized military training. Captain Ashford considered Knox's request with obvious reluctance, recognizing that explosive ordnance testing would provide definitive evidence about Seren's military background, while potentially creating safety risks if her knowledge proved inadequate. Before Captain Ashford could respond, an alarm klaxon sounded across the base, indicating an emergency situation that required immediate attention from all personnel. The alarm's specific pattern identified the emergency as a training exercise malfunction rather than external threat, but still demanded rapid response. The emergency announcement crackled across the public address system. "All personnel report training exercise malfunction at Range Complex Charlie. The explosive ordnance disposal team responded immediately." This is not a drill. The emergency created an opportunity to test Seren's technical knowledge under actual operational conditions rather than controlled evaluation. Knox realized that her response to a real emergency would provide definitive evidence about her background and capabilities. Seren's reaction to the emergency announcement was immediate and professional, demonstrating familiarity with explosive ordnance protocols that suggested training in specialized military procedures. Her movement toward the emergency location showed none of the hesitation that civilian personnel typically displayed when facing potential danger. Knox followed Seren toward the emergency location, his weapons specialist background creating professional interest in her response to explosive ordnance situations. The emergency would provide natural testing of capabilities that had been revealed through formal weapons evaluation. Captain Ashford coordinated the emergency response while monitoring Seren's participation in explosive ordnance procedures. Her involvement in emergency response would be documented officially, creating a permanent record of capabilities that had been demonstrated informally throughout the morning. Dr. Blackstone positioned herself where she could observe the emergency response while maintaining safety distance from potential explosive hazards. Her psychological assessment would need to include evaluation of behavior under actual emergency conditions rather than controlled testing environments. The emergency location revealed a training device that had malfunctioned during routine explosive ordnance disposal instruction, creating potential safety hazard that required immediate technical evaluation and safe disposal procedures. The situation demanded expertise in explosive systems and safety protocols that characterize specialized military training. Seren approached the malfunctioned device with systematic assessment that demonstrated extensive familiarity with explosive ordnance disposal procedures. Her examination technique and safety protocols indicated training that exceeded basic military instruction and suggested specialized assignment in explosive ordnance disposal roles. Knox watched Seren's emergency response with growing awareness that Every situation revealed additional evidence of exceptional military background. Her technical knowledge and safety procedures indicated training in specialized roles that contradicted all assumptions about her civilian contractor status. The malfunction training device required complex technical evaluation to determine safe disposal procedures, assessment that demanded expertise in explosive systems, and safety protocols that characterized elite military specialization rather than general military training. Saren's technical assessment was conducted with professional precision that impressed even the responding explosive ordnance disposal specialists, whose training represented the highest level of expertise available in the naval system. Her knowledge and procedures suggested a background that matched or exceeded their specialized qualifications. Knox realized that the emergency response had provided definitive evidence that Saren's military background included explosive ordnance disposal specialization, capabilities that placed her among the most highly trained personnel in the entire naval system. The successful resolution of the emergency situation demonstrated Saren's exceptional technical capabilities while creating official documentation of expertise that would be reviewed by personnel with authority to investigate her actual background and credentials. Dr. Blackstone documented the emergency response, recognizing that Saren's performance under actual operational conditions had revealed capabilities that characterized elite military specialization rather than civilian contractor qualifications. Captain Ashford supervised the emergency resolution while noting that Saren's participation had demonstrated technical knowledge that exceeded typical explosive ordnance disposal training and suggested background in specialized military operations. Knox approached Saren as the emergency situation concluded, his weapons specialist background creating professional appreciation for capabilities that had been revealed through multiple demonstrations throughout the morning. "Ma'am, your technical knowledge indicates specialized military training that exceeds standard qualification requirements." His acknowledgement represented recognition that comprehensive testing and emergency response had revealed exceptional capabilities across multiple military specialties, confirming that his original harassment had been directed towards someone whose qualifications exceeded his own. But as Knox was speaking to Saren, Decker Hayes approached from behind with obvious intention to continue physical intimidation, despite evidence of her exceptional capabilities. His massive frame and aggressive reputation had made him confident that physical confrontation would establish dominance regardless of her demonstrated skills. "I don't care what kind of training she's had," Decker announced loudly. "Size and strength matter more than technical knowledge when things get physical." Decker's escalation to physical confrontation represented a dangerous miscalculation based on inability to process evidence that had been revealed through comprehensive testing and emergency response. His approach suggested an intention to prove physical dominance despite clear indication of Saren's exceptional military background. Knox recognized that Decker's physical intimidation could escalate into actual confrontation with someone whose capabilities had been proven exceptional across multiple military specialties. "Decker, this isn't necessary. She's demonstrated legitimate qualifications." But Decker's close-quarters combat background had created confidence in his physical capabilities that made him dismissive of technical knowledge and marksmanship skills. His approach toward Saren suggested an intention to establish physical dominance through size and strength rather than professional capability. "Doctor, Blackstone positioned herself to observe the developing physical confrontation while preparing to intervene if the situation exceeded appropriate boundaries for professional interaction. Her psychological training recognized that physical intimidation could escalate rapidly into dangerous confrontation." Decker reached towards Saren's arm with obvious intention to demonstrate physical control, but his movement triggered a response that no one expected. Instead of submitting to intimidation or retreating from confrontation, Saren reacted with professional precision that demonstrated training in close-quarters combat that exceeded even Decker's specialized background. Her defensive movement was executed with systematic efficiency that immediately neutralized Decker's physical advantage while demonstrating combat training that characterized elite military specialization. The technique and precision of her response indicated expertise in close-quarters combat that exceeded standard military instruction. Knox watched the defensive demonstration with professional appreciation for technique that revealed training in specialized combat roles rather than basic military instruction. Saren's response to physical intimidation had demonstrated capabilities that placed her among the most highly trained combat personnel in the naval system. Decker found himself neutralized by defensive techniques that demonstrated training he had not expected from someone he had assumed was vulnerable to physical intimidation. His confidence in size and strength had been immediately countered by superior technique and training. Dr. Blackstone documented the physical confrontation and its resolution, recognizing that Seren's defensive capabilities represented additional evidence of elite military background that contradicted all assumptions about her civilian contractor status. Captain Ashford witnessed the defensive demonstration while recognizing that the physical confrontation had revealed combat training that required official investigation to determine the actual scope of Seren's military background and credentials. But the physical confrontation had an unintended consequence that would transform understanding of the entire situation. During Decker's aggressive approach and Seren's defensive response, the physical struggle caused her gray t-shirt to tear along the shoulder seam, revealing what lay beneath. The torn fabric exposed a tattoo that made every military professional present freeze in recognition. Etched across Seren's upper chest in stark black ink was a naval special warfare trident, the symbol that marked members of the most elite units in the military system. But it wasn't just any trident tattoo. Below the wings and anchor of the Naval Special Warfare insignia, military lettering spelled out DevGru 6 in precise font that identified her as a member of SEAL Team 6, the most classified and elite unit in the entire Naval Special Operations community. Adjacent to the trident tattoo, a Purple Heart medal outline marked her as someone who had been wounded in combat while serving her country, evidence of sacrifice that placed her among the most honored military personnel. Knox stared at the exposed tattoo with complete shock as he realized that his harassment had been directed toward a member of the most elite military unit in existence. The DevGru 6 marking identified her as one of fewer than 300 personnel worldwide who possessed such credentials. Decker backed away from the confrontation as he processed the implications of the tattoo he had exposed through his physical intimidation. His close-quarters combat background made him aware that DevGru 6 personnel represented the absolute pinnacle of military training and capability. The crowd of observers fell silent as word spread about the tattoo that had been revealed through the torn shirt. DevGru 6 credentials were legendary throughout the military system, representing capabilities and experience that exceeded standard special operations training. Dr. Blackstone documented the tattoo revelation and the immediate reaction of all observers, recognizing that the exposed credentials transformed understanding of every interaction that had occurred throughout the morning. Captain Ashford approached Seren with professional bearing that acknowledged the significance of the credentials that had been revealed. "Ma'am, I need to apologize for the treatment you've received this morning. Your actual status should have been recognized and respected. This story proves that real strength doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. If Seren's journey moved you like it moved me, there's another incredible tale about a janitor who shocked an entire military base that you absolutely need to hear. Click the video appearing on your screen right now." Master Chief Vance snapped to attention and rendered a formal military salute, his 3 decades of service creating immediate recognition of the respect due to someone with DevGru 6 credentials. The salute represented acknowledgement of exceptional service and sacrifice that characterized the most elite military personnel. Sergeant Torres documented the tattoo revelation in his official range log, recognizing that the morning's events would require comprehensive review by personnel with authority to investigate the circumstances that had led to harassment of elite military personnel. Knox felt the weight of realization that his weapons specialist credentials had led him to challenge someone whose capabilities exceeded his own by orders of magnitude. His harassment had been directed toward a member of the most elite military unit in existence, making his behavior both inappropriate and potentially career-ending. Braxton stood silent as he processed the implications of the tattoo that had been revealed through the morning's confrontation. His initial mockery had been directed towards someone whose service and sacrifice exceeded that of anyone he had ever met in his military career. The base's public address system crackled to life with an announcement that indicated official attention to the morning's events. All personnel involved in the Mess Hall Alpha incident report to the administration building immediately. This includes all observers and participants. The official summons confirmed that the revelation of Seren's actual credentials had triggered protocols for investigation of the harassment that had been directed toward elite military personnel. The scope of the investigation would include everyone who had participated in or witnessed the morning's events. Dr. Blackstone prepared to relocate her observation activities to the administration building, where official investigation would provide additional data about the institutional factors that had enabled harassment of personnel operating undercover credentials. But before the group could relocate to respond to the official summons, additional personnel arrived at the weapons range, with bearing that identified them as senior command staff responding to the credential revelation. Commander Ethan Cross emerged from a military vehicle with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority in classified operations. His civilian clothes didn't disguise the professional demeanor that marked him as military intelligence personnel, operating under specialized credentials. Knox recognized that Commander Cross's arrival indicated that the revelation of DevGru 6 credentials had triggered a response from personnel with authority in classified operations. The command attention confirmed that the morning's harassment had involved personnel whose actual status required protection at the highest levels. Commander Cross approached Seren with professional courtesy that acknowledged both her revealed credentials and the circumstances that had led to their exposure. "Ma'am, I'm Commander Cross, Intelligence Coordination. We need to discuss the operational implications of this morning's events." His identification of himself as intelligence coordination personnel confirmed that Seren's assignment involved classified operations that had been compromised by the harassment that forced revelation of her actual credentials. Dr. Blackstone noted the family resemblance between Commander Cross and Seren, recognizing that their interaction suggested personal as well as professional connection that hadn't been apparent during the earlier confrontation. Knox realized that the arrival of intelligence coordination personnel indicated that the morning's harassment had interfered with classified operations and would be investigated at levels that could affect national security as well as individual careers. Captain Ashford coordinated with Commander Cross to ensure proper handling of the situation, recognizing that the revelation of DevGru 6 credentials during harassment investigation required response from multiple levels of authority, with expertise in classified operations. Commander Cross addressed the gathered personnel with authority that came from intelligence operations experience. "The personnel you've been interacting with this morning is operating under classified credentials that require protection at the highest levels. The harassment she experienced represents a serious security breach that will be investigated thoroughly." His announcement confirmed that Seren's assignment involved classified operations and that the harassment had compromised operational security in ways that required comprehensive investigation and response. Knox felt the full weight of realization that his investigation of security discrepancies had actually interfered with classified operations involving personnel whose credentials exceeded anything in his experience. His weapons specialist background had enabled him to identify genuine discrepancies, but his methods had compromised national security. Decker Hayes understood that his physical intimidation had not only been inappropriate, but had actually endangered classified operations involving the most elite military personnel. His close-quarters combat reputation would not protect him from consequences related to compromising national security. Dr. Blackstone recognized that her psychological assessment would need to address the institutional factors that had enabled harassment of personnel operating under the highest levels of security classification. The morning's events represented systemic failures that extended beyond individual behavior. Commander Cross continued his briefing of the situation. "The individual you know as maintenance personnel is actually Seren Cross Thorne, Medal of Honor recipient and DevGru 6 operative assigned to classified security assessment of this facility." The full disclosure of Seren's credentials and mission provided context for understanding why her capabilities had exceeded all expectations, while explaining the operational necessity for her cover identity as civilian contractor. Knox realized that his observations about security discrepancies had been accurate because Seren's actual mission involved identifying and assessing security vulnerabilities throughout the base. His harassment had interfered with legitimate security operations that he had been attempting to support through inappropriate methods. Captain Ashford felt the weight of understanding that his earlier recognition of Seren had been based on personal debt that he couldn't acknowledge publicly. His relationship with her extended beyond routine command responsibilities to personal obligations that created complex loyalties. Master Chief Vance recognized that the morning's events would require comprehensive review of policies and procedures for interaction with personnel operating under classified credentials. The harassment had revealed institutional problems that needed systematic correction. Commander Cross addressed Captain Ashford directly. "Captain, we need to discuss the operational parameters that led to this morning's security breach. The mission requirements and cover protocols need immediate review." His request for private discussion with Captain Ashford suggested that the classified operations involved command-level coordination that hadn't been apparent during the harassment investigation. Dr. Blackstone prepared to provide psychological assessment data to support the investigation of institutional factors that had enabled harassment of classified personnel. Her documentation would contribute to policy changes designed to prevent similar security breaches. Knox approached Commander Cross with obvious reluctance. "Sir, I need to report my role in this morning's events. My investigation of security discrepancies led to harassment of personnel whose actual mission I didn't understand." His acknowledgement of responsibility represented recognition that his behavior had compromised classified operations, despite his intention to support base security through identification of potential problems. Commander Cross evaluated Knox's statement with professional attention to both his inappropriate methods and his accurate observations. "Petty Officer Ryder, your security assessment capabilities are noted, but your investigative procedures violated protocols for handling classified personnel. This will be addressed through official channels." Knox understood that his career prospects would be affected by the investigation, but his weapons specialist skills might still provide value if properly channeled through appropriate procedures rather than unauthorized harassment. Decker Hayes approached Commander Cross to acknowledge his role in the physical confrontation that had revealed Seren's credentials. "Sir, my physical intimidation was inappropriate and compromised operational security. I accept full responsibility for my actions." His acknowledgement represented recognition that his behavior had not only been unprofessional, but had actually endangered classified operations through forced revelation of elite credentials. Commander Cross addressed Decker's statement with attention to the serious security implications of his actions. "Petty Officer Hayes, your physical intimidation of classified personnel represents a serious breach of operational security that will be investigated at the highest levels." Dr. Blackstone documented the acknowledgments of responsibility from the primary participants, recognizing that their behavior had created institutional problems that extended beyond individual consequences to systematic policy issues. Captain Ashford requested private discussion with Commander Cross to address the personal and professional factors that had influenced his response to Seren's presence at the base. The complex loyalties and obligations involved required confidential discussion rather than public explanation. Commander Cross coordinated the transition of all personnel to official investigation procedures, ensuring that the operational security breach would be thoroughly investigated and appropriate corrective measures implemented. The revelation of Seren's actual credentials had transformed understanding of the entire morning's events, from routine harassment investigation to national security breach requiring response from the highest levels of military authority. Knox realized that his accurate observations about security discrepancies had been achieved through methods that compromised the very security he had been attempting to protect. The irony of his situation highlighted the importance of proper procedures in handling classified personnel. Braxton finally spoke for the first time since the credential revelation. "Sir, I initiated this morning's harassment based on incorrect assumptions about personnel qualifications. I request formal disciplinary action to address my inappropriate behavior." His acknowledgement represented recognition that his mockery had been directed towards someone whose service and sacrifice exceeded his own understanding of military excellence. Commander Cross evaluated Braxton's statement while noting that his behavior had compromised classified operations through harassment that forced revelation of elite credentials. "Petty Officer Steele, your harassment of Medal of Honor recipient and DevGru 6 personnel represents serious misconduct that will be addressed through appropriate disciplinary channels." Dr. Blackstone completed her documentation of the immediate responses to the credential revelation, recognizing that the psychological assessment would need to address both individual behavior and institutional factors that had enabled the security breach. Master Chief Vance coordinated with Commander Cross to ensure proper handling of the transition from harassment investigation to national security breach response. His experience provided valuable perspective on the command-level changes needed to prevent similar incidents. Seren finally addressed the assembled personnel directly. The harassment I experienced this morning provided valuable data about institutional culture and security awareness that will contribute to improved policies and procedures. Your behavior, while inappropriate, has served important institutional purposes. Her statement demonstrated remarkable professionalism in characterizing harassment as contribution to institutional improvement rather than personal attack requiring punishment. The diplomatic precision of her response showed leadership skills that characterized elite military training. Knox felt the weight of understanding that his harassment had inadvertently contributed to security assessment that was part of Seren's actual mission. The realization that his inappropriate behavior had served institutional purposes didn't excuse his methods, but provided context for understanding the complex dynamics involved. Commander Cross addressed the group with authority that came from intelligence operations experience. This morning's events will be documented and analyzed to improve policies for protection of classified personnel, operating under cover credentials. The lessons learned will benefit institutional security throughout the naval system. His emphasis on institutional learning rather than individual punishment reflected recognition that the security breach revealed systematic problems requiring comprehensive response rather than simple disciplinary action. Dr. Blackstone prepared to provide her psychological assessment to support policy development aimed at preventing harassment of classified personnel. Her documentation would contribute to training programs designed to improve institutional culture and security awareness. Captain Ashford requested permission to provide personal context for his earlier behavior during the investigation. Sir, I need to disclose personal factors that influence my response to this morning's events. Commander Cross granted permission for Captain Ashford to provide confidential briefing about the personal and professional obligations that had affected his handling of the situation. Knox realized that the investigation would reveal complex relationships and obligations that extended beyond routine command responsibilities to personal debts and loyalties that hadn't been apparent during the harassment. The morning's harassment investigation had evolved into a comprehensive security assessment that would influence policies and procedures throughout the naval system. The individual consequences would be significant, but the institutional changes would provide lasting benefit for protection of classified personnel. Master Chief Vance recognized that his leadership responsibilities included ensuring that the lessons learned from the morning's events would be incorporated into training and policy changes that would prevent similar security breaches in the future. Commander Cross concluded the immediate response phase with scheduling of comprehensive investigation and policy review that would address both individual accountability and institutional improvements needed to protect classified personnel. The revelation of Seren's actual credentials had provided definitive answers about her capabilities and background while creating questions about the institutional factors that had enabled harassment of elite military personnel operating under classified credentials. As the immediate crisis response concluded, the focus shifted from emergency management to comprehensive investigation and policy development that would address the systematic changes needed to prevent similar security breaches involving classified personnel. Captain Ashford's private briefing with Commander Cross revealed the personal context that had influenced his earlier behavior. Sir, the operative known as Saren Cross-Thorne saved my life during classified operations in Somalia in 2019. I've been protecting her operational security while managing personal obligations that I couldn't acknowledge publicly. His disclosure provided context for understanding the complex loyalties and obligations that had influenced command responses throughout the morning's events. Commander Cross evaluated Captain Ashford's statement while recognizing that personal debts from combat operations created legitimate influences on professional decision-making that needed to be considered in policy development. Knox learned that his security assessment capabilities would be utilized in future operations if properly channeled through appropriate procedures rather than unauthorized investigation. His weapons specialist skills remained valuable despite his inappropriate methods. Dr. Blackstone completed her psychological assessment with recommendations for institutional changes that would improve culture and training to prevent harassment of personnel operating under classified credentials. The investigation revealed that Seren's mission had been compromised, but not terminated by the harassment, and her security assessment would continue under modified protocols that provided additional protection for her operational security. Master Chief Vance implemented immediate changes to training and supervision procedures to ensure that personnel understood appropriate protocols for interaction with all base personnel, regardless of their apparent status or credentials. Commander Cross disclosed additional context about the classified operations that had brought Seren to Coronado Naval Base. The security assessment mission involves investigation of potential threats to special operations personnel and facilities. The harassment provided valuable data about institutional vulnerabilities that require systematic attention. His explanation provided context for understanding how the morning's inappropriate behavior had inadvertently contributed to legitimate security assessment that was part of Seren's actual mission. Knox realized that his accurate observations about security discrepancies had been achieved through methods that compromised the security assessment he had been unknowingly supporting. The complexity of the situation highlighted the importance of proper procedures in classified operations. The family relationship between Commander Cross and Seren became apparent through their professional interaction, though the personal dynamics remained secondary to operational requirements and security considerations. Dr. Blackstone's psychological assessment contributed to policy development that would improve institutional culture, while ensuring that classified personnel received appropriate protection during undercover operations. Captain Ashford's debt to Seren from combat operations in Somalia provided context for understanding the personal obligations that influenced command decisions throughout the harassment investigation. The morning's events had revealed institutional problems that extended beyond individual behavior to systematic issues requiring comprehensive policy changes and training improvements. Commander Cross concluded the investigation with scheduling of follow-up actions that would address both individual accountability and institutional changes needed to prevent similar security breaches involving classified personnel. Knox received notification that his security assessment capabilities would be utilized in future operations under proper supervision, providing opportunity for career recovery despite his inappropriate methods during the harassment. Decker Hayes faced more serious consequences due to his physical intimidation of classified personnel, but his close-quarters combat expertise would still provide value in appropriate assignments with enhanced supervision. Braxton's harassment of Medal of Honor recipients required significant disciplinary action, but his acknowledgement of responsibility provided foundation for potential career recovery through demonstrated learning and improved behavior. Dr. Blackstone's psychological assessment provided a framework for understanding institutional factors that enabled harassment while developing training programs to improve culture and security awareness throughout the naval system. Master Chief Vance's leadership during the crisis response provided valuable perspective on command-level changes needed to prevent similar incidents while ensuring appropriate protection for classified personnel. The revelation of Seren's actual mission and credentials had transformed a harassment investigation into a comprehensive security assessment that would benefit institutional security throughout the naval system. As the official investigation concluded, the focus shifted to long-term policy changes and training improvements that would provide lasting protection for classified personnel while maintaining operational security for sensitive missions. Commander Cross prepared to brief higher authorities about the institutional lessons learned from the morning's events, ensuring that policy changes would extend beyond individual facilities to systematic improvements throughout the Naval Special Operations community. The morning's harassment had inadvertently revealed security vulnerabilities that required attention, while the investigation had provided valuable data about institutional culture and training needs that would contribute to improved policies and procedures. 6 months after the harassment investigation, the institutional changes had been implemented throughout the naval system, providing improved protection for classified personnel while maintaining operational security for sensitive missions. Knox's security assessment capabilities had been properly channeled into legitimate operations, where his observational skills provided valuable contribution to base security without compromising classified personnel or operations. Dr. Blackstone's psychological assessment had contributed to training programs that improved institutional culture while ensuring appropriate interaction with all personnel, regardless of their apparent status or credentials. Captain Ashford's leadership had been enhanced by resolution of the personal obligations that had influenced his earlier decision-making, allowing him to provide clear guidance for protection of classified personnel. Master Chief Vance's experience during the crisis had provided valuable perspective for training development that would prevent similar incidents while ensuring appropriate respect for all military personnel. The investigation had revealed that institutional problems required systematic attention rather than individual punishment, leading to comprehensive policy changes that benefited security throughout the naval system. Saren's mission had continued under enhanced protocols that provided additional protection for operational security while maintaining the effectiveness of her security assessment activities. Commander Cross had utilized the lessons learned from the harassment investigation to improve policies for protection of classified personnel throughout the intelligence operations community. The morning's events had demonstrated the importance of proper procedures and institutional culture in protecting classified operations while maintaining appropriate respect for all military personnel, regardless of their apparent status. As classified operations continued throughout the naval system, the enhanced policies and training provided improved protection for personnel operating under cover credentials while maintaining operational effectiveness for sensitive missions. The legacy of the harassment investigation extended beyond individual consequences to systematic improvements that would protect future classified personnel while maintaining the operational security necessary for national defense. 2 years later, as Saren prepared for her next classified assignment, she reflected on how a morning of harassment had ultimately contributed to institutional changes that would protect countless other personnel operating under similar circumstances. The encrypted communication device in Commander Cross's office crackled to life, with a message that would set the stage for future operations. Project Shadowline assets require extraction. Father's location confirmed. Family reunion authorized. Commander Cross responded immediately. Understood. Initiating extraction protocols. Bloodline operations are gone. The message revealed that the family mysteries hinted at throughout the investigation were about to be resolved through classified operations that would bring together elements that had been separated for years. Saren received notification of the new mission through secure channels, understanding that her next assignment would involve family dynamics that had been developing in classified operations for decades. The morning's harassment investigation had been resolved, but the family connections and classified operations would continue to develop through future missions that would test personal loyalties against professional obligations in ways that would define careers and relationships for years to come. As the immediate story concluded, the encrypted message indicated that larger operations were beginning that would build upon the relationships and lessons learned through the harassment investigation and its aftermath. The final transmission from headquarters contained a single line that summarized the ongoing nature of classified operations. Some missions never end, they just get inherited. The encrypted terminal in Commander Cross's office remained active as additional intelligence flowed through classified channels. Data streams from multiple global sources converged into a comprehensive briefing that would reshape understanding of operations that had been developing for over a decade. Project Shadowline had originated as a deep cover infiltration program designed to identify and neutralize threats to special operations personnel worldwide. The program's scope extended far beyond routine intelligence gathering to include long-term placement of elite operatives in positions where they could monitor and respond to emerging security challenges. Commander Cross reviewed the incoming intelligence with professional attention that was complicated by personal investment in the operation's success. The assets requiring extraction included personnel who had been operating under deep cover for years, maintaining identities that had become integral to their assigned communities. Saren received her mission briefing through secure communication channels that provided encrypted data about extraction requirements and operational parameters. The mission would require coordination between multiple intelligence agencies and special operations units, with timing that demanded precision execution. The family reunion referenced in the encrypted message involved more than simple personal relationships. Commander Cross and Saren's father had been instrumental in establishing Project Shadowline, with operational responsibilities that had required separation from family obligations for extended periods. Colonel Marcus Crossthorne had been presumed dead following a classified operation in Eastern Europe 8 years earlier, but recent intelligence indicated that his deep cover assignment had been maintained through circumstances that prevented communication with family members or official channels. The extraction mission would reunite family members who had been separated by operational necessity while simultaneously concluding a classified program that had achieved its strategic objectives through methods that required permanent documentation and personnel rotation. Dr. Blackstone's psychological assessment of the harassment investigation had contributed to improved understanding of institutional factors that affected personnel operating under deep cover assignments. Her recommendations had influenced training programs designed to support family members of classified operatives. Knox's security assessment capabilities had been integrated into Project Shadowline's support operations, where his observational skills provided a valuable contribution to extraction planning without compromising operational security or personnel safety. Captain Ashford's experience during the harassment investigation had prepared him for command responsibilities in classified operations that required balancing personal loyalties with professional obligations under circumstances that tested leadership skills. Master Chief Vance's institutional perspective had contributed to policy development that supported families of classified operatives while maintaining operational security requirements necessary for program success. The extraction operation would involve coordination between Naval Special Operations, intelligence agencies, and diplomatic personnel to ensure safe recovery of assets who had been operating under extreme operational conditions for extended periods. Intelligence analysis revealed that Project Shadowline assets had successfully identified and neutralized multiple threats to special operations personnel, with operational achievements that had prevented significant casualties and protected classified information. The program's success had been achieved through sacrifice and dedication of personnel who had maintained deep cover assignments under circumstances that demanded extraordinary personal and professional commitment over years of operational deployment. Colonel Crossthorn's extraction would conclude his assignment while providing intelligence about threats that had been developing throughout his operational deployment. His debriefing would contribute to future operations designed to protect special operations personnel worldwide. Commander Cross coordinated extraction planning with multiple agencies while managing personal emotions related to reunion with family members who had been separated by operational requirements beyond their control. Seren's role in the extraction operation would utilize skills that had been demonstrated during the harassment investigation, while applying specialized training that characterized DevGru 6 operational capabilities. The mission timeline required rapid deployment to multiple international locations where Project Shadowline assets were positioned, with extraction sequences that demanded precision execution under potentially hostile conditions. Intelligence indicated that some Project Shadowline assets faced immediate threats that required emergency extraction procedures, while others could be recovered through routine diplomatic channels that provided enhanced operational security. The extraction operation represented the culmination of strategic planning that had been developing since the program's inception, with contingency procedures that addressed multiple scenarios for personnel recovery under various operational conditions. Colonel Crossthorn's location had been confirmed through intelligence sources that verified his operational status while providing extraction coordinates that would enable family reunion after 8 years of separation. The mission would require Seren and Commander Cross to work together professionally while managing personal relationships that had been affected by years of separation and classified operational requirements. Dr. Blackstone's continued involvement in psychological support for classified operatives had prepared her to assist with family reunification procedures that addressed emotional challenges related to extended separation under operational conditions. Knox's weapons specialist expertise would support extraction operations through technical assessment of equipment and security requirements necessary for personnel recovery in potentially hostile environments. Captain Ashford's command experience would coordinate base support for extraction operations while ensuring that returning personnel received appropriate medical evaluation and psychological support during transition procedures. Master Chief Vance's leadership would oversee institutional support for families of returning operatives, ensuring that long-term care and recognition would be provided for personnel who had served under extreme operational conditions. The extraction operation represented a transition from active Project Shadowline operations to comprehensive debriefing and analysis that would influence future classified programs designed to protect special operations personnel. Intelligence analysis suggested that threats identified through Project Shadowline would require ongoing monitoring and response, with new programs that built upon lessons learned through 8 years of operational experience. The family reunion would occur within operational security parameters that protected classified information, while enabling personal relationships to resume under circumstances that acknowledged the sacrifice and service of all family members. Colonel Crossthorn's debriefing would provide intelligence about international threats that had been developing throughout his assignment, with strategic implications that would influence policy development and operational planning for years. The extraction timeline required immediate action to ensure safe recovery of all Project Shadowline assets before operational security could be compromised by changing international conditions that affected personnel safety. Commander Cross initiated extraction protocols with coordination that balanced operational requirements with personal investment in successful recovery of family members who had served beyond normal expectations under classified conditions. Seren prepared for deployment with the understanding that the mission would test both professional capabilities and personal relationships that had been affected by years of separation and classified operational requirements. The morning's harassment investigation had inadvertently prepared institutional support systems that would assist with family reunification and recognition of service that had exceeded normal operational expectations under classified conditions. As extraction operations commenced, the legacy of Project Shadowline would influence future programs designed to protect special operations personnel while maintaining the family support systems necessary for long-term operational success. The encrypted communication that had initiated the extraction sequence represented the culmination of strategic planning that had protected special operations personnel worldwide while maintaining operational security requirements necessary for program success. In secure facilities around the globe, other Project Shadowline assets received extraction notifications that would conclude assignments and enable return to families who had waited years for reunion under circumstances that tested personal relationships and professional obligations. The mission had evolved from routine harassment investigation to family reunion that would reshape understanding of sacrifice and service required for protection of national security through classified operations that exceeded normal operational expectations. As aircraft departed for extraction operations worldwide, the morning's harassment at Coronado Naval Base had ultimately contributed to institutional changes that would support future operations while honoring the service and sacrifice of personnel who had operated under the most challenging classified conditions.
Behind every uniform is a person trying their best. See each other with respect. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to TNG Story.